Good afternoon and greetings to all of those who are joining us at our Washington headquarters, to our virtual audience, particularly in Denmark, elsewhere in Europe and around the world. I'm Fred Kemp, I'm President and CEO of the Atlantic Council. I'd like to welcome you all to a fireside chat on transatlantic security and NATO's northeastern flank with Troels Lund Poulsen, the Defense Minister and Deputy Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Denmark. Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, it's an honor for us to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Today's event is hosted by the Atlantic Council's Transatlantic Security Initiative, housed within our Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. The Atlantic Council throughout its history has always believed that the transatlantic is at its best, not only as an alliance of common values, but also the cornerstone of U.S. global leadership that offers immense economic, political, and security benefits to allied governments, citizens both sides of the Atlantic. It's our view that we're at a historic inflection point, as crucial as the periods after World War I, after World War II, after the Cold War, where U.S. leadership alongside allies and partners will have global and generational consequences. We have no stronger, no more consistent ally than Denmark at this historic moment. We live in a contested and unpredictable world with assumptions about liberal democracy and the post-Cold War international order in question. A new axis of aggressors has emerged. You saw them recently in Beijing, parading together. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, seeking to undermine U.S. interests and the Western alliance. We're also focused at the Atlantic Council on the evolution of artificial intelligence, which has introduced a new era of technological change, where the speed of innovation is rapidly transforming not just a modern battlefield, but also global information space. So we have tectonic changes geopolitically and tectonic changes in geotechnology as well. The European security landscape has been fundamentally reshaped by Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine into its fourth year, along with President Donald Trump's return to the White House. And the two together have driven NATO allies to adapt new political realities, transatlantic relationship. The Atlantic Council was in force at the NATO summit in The Hague, as was the Deputy Prime Minister. And of course, there we had what none of us would have believed possible last year at this time, which is a 3.5% defense commitment, core defense, of GDP spending, 5% altogether, with 1.5% to defense-related costs. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said in her State of the Union address that this simple phrase, Europe is in a fight. And she really talked about Europe as not just a soft power organization, but a hard power organization. Last part of this context before I turn to our speaker. Recent violations of Allied airspace, including unexplained drone activity over Denmark, have reminded us today's threats extend beyond the borders of Russia and Ukraine. After decades of underinvestment, we're moving along with greater investment. And then just last week, the European Commission announced a new proposal, the Defense Readiness Roadmap 2030, a comprehensive plan to strengthen Europe's defense capabilities. This new plan proposes several flagship programs, including European Drone Defense Initiative, Eastern Flank Watch, European Air and Space Shields. Things are moving. Denmark is a key contributor to these efforts as a leader in terms of both European and transatlantic security. So with that, it's my honor to introduce Minister Poulsen. He served as Denmark's Minister of Defense and Deputy Prime Minister since 2023. His long-standing career in politics includes previous roles as Minister for Economic Affairs, Minister for Employment, Minister for Business and Growth, Minister of Environment, and Chair of the Danish delegation to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. So Minister Poulsen, it's a pleasure, and let's jump right in. You heard me tee this up. It's a time of enormous change in Europe. And I wonder if you can just give us a feeling. We're in the fourth year of the war. Where are we? Where are we in how well Europe is standing up to this? Where are we in the strength of the transatlantic relationship and in the dangers posed by Vladimir Putin and Russia?
First of all, thank you for being here. I have visited Ukraine 10 times during the last 2 years, and looking into what's going on right now in Ukraine, I'm quite concerned for the future of Ukraine. So that's also a part of the security environment right now in Europe and also in Denmark. But maybe going some months back in June, you just mentioned the NATO meeting in Hague. I think that was indeed a wake-up call for Europe. Europe has to do more, to invest more, to be able to defend ourselves, and also be able, in fact, to have a stronger cooperation, also a stronger transatlantic cooperation. And I think we should also be quite honest that the US has, for many years, paid too much for the security of Europe. So the outcome of the meeting in The Hague, I think that was indeed a success. Now most European countries has to step up. Denmark is indeed also an example of that. Going 3 years back, at that time we spent below 2% of our GDP on defense, core defense. This year, hopefully we will reach 3.22% of GDP spent on defense, and in the years to come we will reach the goal of 3.5% on core defense spendings. So I think we have seen the reality in Europe. We have to do more, and we have to do it faster. And the most difficult part right now, and I think we share that with our friends here in the US, is how to scale up, speed up production of military equipment. That is indeed a concern for me, how to do that.
So let's go to there. I've just come back from Ukraine myself. I was there with a couple of my colleagues, talked to the Minister of Defense, the Foreign Minister, also the Deputy Prime Minister, who runs something called Brave One, which is given some inspiration to Brave EU, which Minister Kubilius is championing. What was really interesting is how often Denmark came up in my conversations in Ukraine, almost as a model of a relationship with the European country over defense production. I doubt many people in the audience know very much about this, so I wonder if you can tell us where you are, how did this come about, and how do you see the future in terms of your defense relationship with Ukraine?
Yeah, I'd like to do that. Going back to March last year, I spent some days in Kyiv and had several meetings at that time. And one evening I had a meeting with Umrov. He was Minister of Defense at that time. And we sat down in a Hyatt hotel in Kyiv, a late evening, and developed what since has been known as the Danish model. And that is, in fact, a quite simple model. We agreed that Denmark would like to spend money directly to invest in defense companies in Ukraine, also doing reimbursement of some of the contracts between the government of Ukraine and defense companies in Ukraine. The first pilot project was launched back in July last year. It was a pilot project for reimbursing 18 Bogdana artillery systems.
Can you tell us what the Bogdana is?
Yeah, that's in fact just a truck with a kind of missile, so they'll be able to attack the Russian enemy. So it was a new system developed in Ukraine, but we have also similar systems here in US and also Europe. But it was a developed system in Ukraine, made in Ukraine, and that system was in fact being produced. These 18 pieces were produced in 2 months. Should we have bought them in Europe, it will have taken 2 years to get these 18 pieces delivered. And the cost of that was also quite low. Should we have bought these systems in Europe, we only have got 6 of them. Now we got 3 times, namely 18 systems. So this model...
Was this a Danish company with a Ukrainian company, or how did it work?
It was a Ukrainian company called Kramatorsk.
Yeah.
They started up the production, and we gave them money to start up the production and paid for the 18 systems. And the 18 systems was, after they were produced, directly delivered to the battlefield. And since then, we have developed investments directly into drone companies, missile production, and all that kind of issues. Going 3 years back, at that time, the production capacity in defense area in Ukraine was about $3 billion. This year, it will be about $40 billion. So that's a huge ramp up in Ukraine. But the major problem right now is, in fact, to have money enough to fill the gap for the production. Right now, I think there's a gap for about $20 billion. So the best and most easiest way to give more power to our friends in Ukraine, that is, in fact, to invest directly in these companies, because
they have the capacity to build more if they had the money to do it. Yeah.
The only question right now is money, not production facilities or capacity. They are able to produce, and they're able to produce very, very fast.
So drill down a little bit more on the Danish model. I mean, is this a model other European countries are taking? As I understand it, it's expected to reach 1.3 billion by 2025. Perhaps a portion of the funds derived from profits generated from frozen Russian assets. We're not quite there yet. And so how scalable is this model? And I think I've heard that Ukrainians might also do some production in Denmark at the same time. Is that also true?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The first, what we are calling the Danish model 1.0, that is investing directly into defense companies in Ukraine. And this year, in fact, I think we will reach about 1.8 billion US dollars.
Wow.
Last year, we were able to invest about 500 million US dollars. So we are able right now to raise money. Money will come from other European countries, our neighboring countries in the Nordic area, but also the European Union are giving money to the Danish model. So much more could be done in that context, because the production facilities, the production capacity is, as I just told, very high and very active right now in Ukraine. The second part, what we have just announced in Denmark, is what we have named the Danish Model 2.0. And that will be to invite defense companies from Ukraine to establish production in Denmark. The first company was announced here last month in September. It was a company called Firepoint. They are producing missiles. So a part of that production for missiles will be produced in Denmark. It will be a safe haven for this company. They are under attack each day for their production facilities in Ukraine. So being able to start up a production in Denmark, that will be a great advantage for them. But it will also be a great advantage for Denmark, because some of these products would also be possible for us to buy in the future when we have to invest more in our defense and buy some new capabilities. So that's, in fact, a way forward. I hope we will see other European countries inviting our friends from Ukraine to start up production. And hopefully in the coming months, more companies from Ukraine will start up production in Denmark. That could be drone companies or other of the defense area companies.
Yeah. And maybe the EU can remove some of the bureaucracy to move more quickly, like Ukraine does at the same time, but that's my own personal...
Yeah, that's also a necessary task to take some of the red tape away.
So explain to the audience virtually and in the audience here why Denmark is contributing so much to Ukraine. How do you see the stakes for your country, but for Europe as well?
First of all, the security situation in Ukraine is directly linked to the security of Europe and also the security for Denmark. we have to be able to support Ukraine also in the longer run. If we will see Ukraine lose the war to Russia, it will also have a direct impact on the security environment in our area. So giving support to Ukraine is in fact also giving support for our own security. That's the main reason why we have been able to finance the support for Ukraine for the last 3.5 years in Denmark with a broad political majority. There's a huge support for that. And I think also that the future would demand that Europe has to do more together, because we can't allow Russia to do what we have seen in Ukraine. You can also, in fact, discuss that we reacted too slow about the war on Crimea, going 10 years back. And I think the lessons learned from that is that we have to do more together, and we have to step up. And Europe has also to be able to finance a much stronger support for Ukraine, not only this year, but also in the years to come.
Thank you for that. And a tip of the hat to your Prime Minister Frederiksen as well for her leadership on this set of issues. One more question before I turn to something else. I talked earlier about the airspace violations. Is this a nuisance? Is this a danger? What do you read into what's going on? And what's happened, and maybe first you can share what's happened in particular with Denmark. We know about Poland, Estonia. It's not isolated to just one country.
No, we have seen what you can call hybrid activities in quite many European countries. We have seen drone activities in Poland and also in some of our Baltic countries, and recently also in Denmark. And I think that's a part of the new security situation right now in Europe. I think, in fact, Russia will try to test Europe right now, test us if we are willing to stand together with our allies, and also test our ability to detect and also to combat these drones. I must also say that the drone activities in Denmark is under investigation. We don't know which kind of drone activities we saw. We have not seen the report from the police, but still we have seen too many things going on right now in Europe. So it's linked to this new hybrid warfare, and I think we have to deal with that in the years to come. That will be a huge challenge for NATO, but also for the European Union. And you just rightly mentioned in the beginning that we just last week discussed new initiatives to be better prepared for the future, and also to invest more in some of the new capabilities, especially on drones.
No, absolutely fascinating what's happening in Europe. The most unallocated defense dollars in the world at the moment. Who would have thought that? How is that matched against the threat landscape? Has the threat landscape escalated that much in the last couple of years, or is it just a realization belatedly of what one is facing?
I think the security challenge right now, that's hybrid warfare. That could be cyber attacks, that could be drone activity, that could be attacks on our energy systems, all that kind of thing. And we have not been familiar with all these activities before. We have to look into that. And it's not a normal war in talking about a war context. This is a new way of giving problems for the people in Europe and also for the governments. And that will also create new ways of investing in capabilities. I'm quite concerned that we should be aware of investing in new technology, and also be quite much aware not to overinvest in old technologies. And that's also the reason why I'm so linked to the situation in Ukraine and how we can learn from the battlefield in Ukraine. The Chief of Defense in Denmark has, in fact, 1 year ago started up a program to give his chief of the army, chief of the air force, and also chief of the navy a direct order to go to Ukraine and have lessons learned from the battlefield. So when we have to invest in new capabilities in Denmark, we will also look into what's going on right now in Ukraine. We can learn a lot. Of course, there will also be some things that we not can transfer to Denmark, but much more could be done in the context of drones and new technology, and especially some of the things going on in the way the army has been able to fight, and also unmanned systems. I think unmanned systems is the new way forward, also to invest in new capabilities, whatever it's in the sea or in the air.
So when I was in Ukraine, I had the great good fortune to be at a secret waterfront location and actual experience myself on a console driving a sea drone. I'll tell you what I learned from that, but I'd love to hear, you've spent more time in this, I'd love to hear what you learned. What I was told is that the front line had become a 15 to 20 kilometer killing zone. And because of the drone technology, drone and anti-drone technology, any human being, and really any tank that came into that killing zone was killed. And then the long-range drone activity is growing, so they're going after that. But what was interesting is the person said to me, this is now less a battle over territory and more a battle technology race. So that was what I learned. I took that away. And he was saying that the Russians are fast. They're responding quickly, and any drone we invent or roll off the manufacturing line this month will be obsolete in 2 months. That was an eye-opener for me, but I didn't know how that applied to the future of warfare. So as you're looking at Ukraine for Denmark, you talked about autonomous warfare. What's the most important lessons you've taken away from Ukraine?
That's technology.
Yeah.
And the speed of technology and innovation. Talking about drones, I think the life of an invented drone in Ukraine right now is about 8 weeks or maybe 10 weeks. And then you have to invent a new drone. So the lessons learned from Ukraine is that you have to introduce the use of technology on a much more clever way than we have seen before. And I think our military personnel should be aware of that. I think, in fact, we are looking into disruption right now, talking about defense companies in Ukraine. And they are using AI, they are using all these new technologies to invent, to be better to fight against Russia. And that's also a question about money. Just to give 2 figures, Russia are able to spend about $300 billion per year to fight against Ukraine. Ukraine has the potential of having about $50 billion, so it's 1 to 6. That's also the reason why we have to do even more to finance the support for Ukraine. I think the needs right now in Ukraine is about $100 billion to keep up fighting against Russia. But if we are not able to get the finance for our friends in Ukraine, they are running out of money, and that's quite simple.
I'm so glad you underscored that. 1 to 6, 300 billion to 50 billion. Yet, if you look at the U.S. and Europe GDP versus that of Russia, it's about 50 to 1.
Yes.
So obviously we can do that if we want to. Let me talk about the Arctic. Denmark stepped up its role in securing the Arctic region, committed to spending $8.5 billion on new ships and aircraft, including the purchase of 16 new F-35 fighter jets. Thank you on behalf of the United States for that. You've announced a new $4.2 billion Arctic defense package this month. So talk about Arctic defense as a priority for the Kingdom of Denmark, and how will Denmark's ability to operate in the Arctic and North Atlantic change once these investments are realized? And into this question, I'm going to sneak in my trick question on Greenland, because I don't think my 25 years at the Wall Street Journal would be punished if I didn't ask you about where we stand on Greenland.
First of all, I think we for too many years have not been able to invest enough in the security in the Arctic and also the North Atlantic area. And that's also a concern that I have raised in NATO. I think NATO has not been focused on the northern part of the alliance. Right now, we see that NATO the NATO's willingness is to have more focus on the Arctic. That's very good. We have also seen that governments in Denmark have not been focused on investing enough on security in the Arctic. We are doing that now. We are stepping up. I fully agree with Trump in that context that we have to do more, investing in the security and also in new capabilities in the Arctic. And I think we have to do it together. That's also a reason why I think we have to do more together in NATO. We are right now working on investing together with Norway and also UK on some of these capabilities. That could be P8. That's a plane here from US to hunt submarines to give a better overview about what's going on. We should also invest in more satellites. All that kind of new equipment should we be willing to invest in. Right now, I think there's a golden opportunity for doing that together. And of course, Greenland is a part of the Kingdom of Denmark and will still be a part of the Kingdom of Denmark. The decision for Greenland would be for the Greenlandic people. But nevertheless, I think we should be able to do more in that area. Also because we see much more awareness from Russia and in the years to come also from China. So we have a common task here to be able to do more together.
So one more question from me for the moment, and I'm going to be watching my screen here. I'll look to see if anyone in the audience has a question. Please raise your hand if you do, and we'll get a microphone to you. Online, if you could go to askac.org, and then I'll see it pop up on my, we have a couple of listeners who've got ahead of me already, so I have a couple of questions on my screen, Mr. Minister. Let me drill down a little deeper on Denmark. Comments from President Trump earlier in the year obviously generated a lot of attention and strong pushback also from Denmark, but we haven't heard much about this lately. Could you share where things currently stand on discussions with the Trump administration about the future of Greenland?
I think we have been quite clear from the Danish government arguing and also showing that we are willing to invest more in new capabilities. And the question right now is, in fact, delivery times when we are buying new equipment, also here in the US. Mm-hmm. Buying P8 planes, I think the delivery time for these planes maybe is 5 to 6 years. So it's a very long period from taking a decision to get these capabilities for operation and for operation use. So hopefully one of the discussions in the future will also be how US will help being able to produce faster and also deliver some of these necessary capabilities. I think also much more could be done to have training activities together and also to invest in new capabilities together. That could be satellites, but it could also be icebreakers or some of these capabilities that will be needed in the future. But right now, we have a very good and open, frank discussion with our friends here in the US. I've just been to the Hill, discussing what we are doing in Denmark with some of the senators from the Republican Party, and the message from them is quite clear that Denmark is stepping up and also giving their good recommendations to Denmark for what we have achieved right now. So I'm quite comfortable with the future. Also talking about the Arctic. But we have to do and have to have a more strong focus also from NATO. I think that will be a main topic in the years to come, that NATO have to be more aware of the security environment in the Arctic.
Thank you so much for that. So looking around here, I think I'll go first to the screen and then I'll come back to the audience. I've got Ben Wright asking, is Deputy Prime Minister Poulsen concerned about the interoperability among Denmark's mix of American-made and European-made weapons platforms? What are the primary reasons what are the primary reasons for the switch to European SAMs? And you can explain to the audience what SAMs are as well.
Yes, that's land-based air defense systems. And the reason why we have now chosen this France-Italian system is focused on how fast that could be delivered. I think most of you would be aware of the situation that having the possibility to buy Patriots, that's also in the interest of Denmark, but it's a very, very long time to get these systems delivered. Right now, we are also discussing with our friends here in the US if we will be able to buy Patriot systems, but we need a fast way forward to build up our defense in Denmark. We don't have any land-based air defense systems in Denmark right now. We took them away 20 years ago. At that time, in the beginning, I think it was 2004, we said we don't need them in the future. Right now, lessons learned from Ukraine is in fact that now we have to reintroduce them in Denmark. So the reason to choose the France-Italian system was in fact that they could be delivered very, very fast. But I'm also traveling around in these days arguing that we are willing to buy even more in the US. This morning I had a meeting for buying 16 new F-35 fighter jets. Hopefully it'll be possible to get them delivered during the next couple of years, maybe 2 to 3 years from now. We are also willing to buy more, or to buy missiles from the US, long-range drones. So it's not a competition between Europe and US, because we have to do more and also be able to produce more in Europe, but still we have also to buy from our friends in the US in the future, and I will also be willing to do that.
So I want to take this moment to salute our own team from the Skokov Center, particularly Tori Tausig, who's running our transatlantic security initiative. We're in the process of launching something called Reimagining European Defense, and one of the things we're looking at is these bureaucratic impediments. And what I felt in Ukraine is it really was Ukraine depending on Europe and the United States to be able to match. You gave the numbers of that. But Ukraine's on war footing, and we're not really. And somehow that mentality needs to change. While Russia not only has the money you're talking about, but it also has a China, a North Korea, and Iran, all of which more or less are on war footing, or at least more so than we are. Do you see an increased feeling of urgency now, either across the Atlantic inside of Europe, or is it still insufficient for the moment?
I think the last 2 to 3 years has shown us that we have to step up and we have to invest more, also create more production for our defense companies, but still too much red tape is on the table, talking about giving production facilities a better way to establish in Denmark, but also in Europe. Too much bureaucracy is also here in the US when we are willing to buy military equipment here. The foreign military sales is a headache indeed, also for Denmark. So I think the urgency is on the table, but still the link between Russia, China, North Korea and Iran, that's a huge challenge for us, because lessons learned from Russia are going directly to China, what will come up in the next 2 or 3 years, talking about China and Taiwan. I'm very much concerned about that. And lessons coming from Russia directly to China, that will also pose a threat for all of us. So hopefully it's a wake-up call right now to establish production and do it fast. And that's also why I'm arguing so much that we have to learn from our friends in Ukraine. We don't have to create all the systems by ourselves. We can learn quite much from Ukraine and invite them to our countries to start up production and also get some of the technology transferred to our companies.
Thank you for providing that context and scope. Please identify yourself and put a question mark at the end of whatever you say.
Thank you for sharing this with us, Minister. I wanted to ask you.
Could you identify yourself?
My name is Ali. I work with Strafe, a strategic intelligence firm. So, given Denmark's focus on fast delivery and scaling defense production to 3.5, would Copenhagen consider cooperation with other agile NATO countries instead of France and US for maybe like Turkey, especially in drones?
First of all, I'll say that the production of drones and also the possibility of working with drone companies will be based on a strong cooperation with our friends in Ukraine. They are the best in Europe to invent these new technologies. We have also Danish companies that could be part of these joint ventures, but I think we should do what we can to establish fast production in Denmark, and that will be to invite our friends from Ukraine to start up production. That's the best way forward. Also to create a better safe environment for the companies in Ukraine, because they are daily under attack. Daily attacks from Russia for all the production facilities around in Ukraine, for all the defense companies. So that's also a part of the war going on right now, that Russia are trying to hunt down all these production facilities because Ukraine has been so great to establish new production.
Thank you. Let me pick up a question I put up earlier. Is it up? Let's see. How do I hit that? Oh, I'll just read it. It's from Aram Melkumian. Now that Sweden and Finland are NATO members, do you see potential for deeper Nordic Arctic defense coordination, for instance, involving Greenland's strategic role that could reduce the need to rely so heavily on U.S. U.S. assets? And then a related question from Kristen Taylor of the Atlantic Council. Denmark's links to Arctic, Nordic, and Baltic Sea regions. How does Denmark bridge these different regions when it comes to deterrence and defense in Europe? So really digging deeper on the whole Arctic question. And also, I think a really interesting question. The United States sometimes feels far away. If you actually look at a map, Sweden and Finland joining NATO is a pretty dramatic change.
It is, and it has also changed the way for the Nordic countries to work together. I've seen this on a daily basis. In fact, going 3 years back or 4 years back, we had a cooperation, of course, between the Nordic countries also on defense, but it was very difficult to get it moving. 2 of the countries were not members of NATO. Right now, we are doing quite much also to invest in new capabilities together. P8, for instance, could be one example. We are willing to buy P8s, but our friends in Norway have P8s. Germany have P8s. UK has P8 planes. So,
and can you tell the audience what a P8 is?
It is, in fact, a plane to hunt submarines or to discover submarines in the Arctic. And I think having the possibility to share these capabilities together, that's the way forward. We will also see the air fueling tankers that you have invested heavily in from the US. Now we are also willing to invest in this capability in the Nordic area. Denmark will be able to procure 2 of these tankers, and we will share them with our friends in the Nordic area. That could be Norway and Finland and Sweden. So buying things together, using some of the new capabilities together, I think that would be the way forward, also to spend the money wisely. Because spendings right now are heavily in Denmark on defense. And I think some of the taxpayers, or all the taxpayers in Denmark, are also looking into how we are spending the money. Are we doing that on a favorable way, or are we just overspending the money? And one of my major concerns right now is the discussion about overspending. Going 5 or 10 years in the future, I think there'll be a huge discussion about how has we spent the money on new technologies, and are we also, or will we be able to share some of these capabilities? And I think that would be the lessons learned in the Nordic area, that we will share some of the capabilities together.
I think that's such an important point, because it's one thing to say, I mean, you're close to 3.5%, and there's all sorts of means of getting to the 5% with the additional 1.5%. But as I talk to leaders around Europe, unless they have huge growth, which doesn't seem to be in the cards right now for most of Europe, you have to take from social programs, you have to take from somewhere else to be able to meet these spending goals. And that's what you're flagging, is that this is going to be a domestic political challenge.
It is, and that's in fact also the reason why it is a very good idea to learn from Ukraine, because they will be able to produce new capabilities to a very low price. Mm-hmm. So that will be the first way to procure, do it together with some of the companies from Ukraine. But the second way forward, seen from my perspective, would be to have a better sharing of these capabilities. Buying them one by one, that will be very costful. So we have to do more together, and NATO will play a crucial role in that area, of course.
Thank you so much. Questions? Tori, let me take one here and then one there, please. And take 2 minutes about talking about reimagining European defense.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first, Mr. Minister, thank you very much for coming to the Atlantic Council today. My name is Tori Tausig. I direct the Transatlantic Security Initiative here. As Fred mentioned, we're looking at the landscape across Europe and seeing generational amounts of potential defense spending, but also seeing the bureaucratic hurdles, the procurement hurdles, the fragmentation in the European market, and taking a big swing at how we help assist allied governments in assessing how best to spend these new defense dollars. What are the capabilities that need rapid defense spending, and how we shape recommendations so that Europe is capable of defending itself with the United States and on its own as Russia reconstitutes its military. So we'll be building out a major task force over the next year to provide those recommendations to the EU, to NATO, and to allied governments for turning defense dollars into capabilities. And my question actually stems from this. As you look out from Denmark across the European landscapes, what capabilities are you most concerned about Europe ramping up quickly and effectively? This gets somewhat to NATO capability targets, capability gaps, but from your perspective, what are the capabilities that Europe is lacking, and that as you see Russia reconstituting a threat to Europe, that you think Europe should be focused on imminently in the near future? Is it layered air defense? Is it long-range fires? Where do you see the priority being? Thank you.
That's indeed a difficult question. Seen from my perspective, it's land-based air defense systems. Land-based air defense systems, the Patriot systems, the SAM-T. It is very important to ramp up the production for these systems. I think that's the lessons learned coming out from Ukraine, and Ukraine will need even more support for Patriot systems, for SAM-T systems. So I think that should be high on the agenda. I think also what you can call the transfer of technology, and that could be a broad-based issue of capabilities. I think that will be the second part. how to invent new technologies, how to create better ways of having lessons learned from Ukraine, also in some of the military doctrines in the NATO plans. I think there's a huge gap between what's going on the battlefield, and the battlefield in the eastern part of Ukraine is in fact a combination of Second World War and a high-tech war going on. So we have to learn from that, and I think we have not been good enough to transfer what's going on in the battlefield to production of new military equipment.
Thank you. Please.
Good afternoon. My name is Alex Hamilton. I'm a retired Foreign Service officer, served as a foreign policy advisor at UCOM and in Vilnius, Lithuania before that. And Mr. Minister, could I ask you to speak to Denmark's cooperation with the Baltic states, since if Ukraine loses, they're likely the next target of Russian aggression? Thank you.
We have been for many years committed to support our friends in the Baltic states. We have been investing heavily in training activities for the 3 Baltic states. And right now we are working very close together with Latvia. We have troops based there at a NATO presence. About 800 Danish soldiers are right now in Latvia, being a part of this NATO presence there. And we will be doing that on a yearly basis together with Sweden. But I think you're totally right. We have to be very aware of the situation in the 3 Baltic states, and also to show solidarity in the future. That will also be on sharing capabilities, especially also in the Navy area. I think the surroundings of Denmark is water, and the fleet will be a great part of our future also to defend ourselves. So working closely together with the Baltic states and also the Nordics in this area is for me very crucial.
I see a question here on the screen from Phil Dickinson. Maybe we'll have Phil Dickinson ask it even as we show it on the screen.
Happy to ask it in person. Thank you, Minister. Really fascinating.
From the Atlantic Council, also Transatlantic Security Initiative. Yeah, thank you.
There you go. Thank you, Fred, as well. You mentioned earlier that the lessons learned from Ukraine are being fed to China and North Korea and other adversaries in that region. Over the last couple of days, we've had some conversations with some of our colleagues in the Indo-Pacific Security Initiative here at the Council about the links between Europe and the Indo-Pacific. And so I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts about how you see Europe having a role in the Indo-Pacific, either in deterring conflict or in responding should conflict arise. Thank you.
And I think this also gets what one underlies that is something more than an intellectual conversation in Washington about whether the U.S. ought to be aimed at China and Europe aimed at Russia, and whether the burden shift should be considerably different, or whether you see a role for Denmark as well in the Indo-Pacific.
First of all, I think you have had this discussion about burden sharing and also the Indo-Pacific for quite many years here in the U.S. I think it was Secretary Clinton, Hillary Clinton, when she was Minister for Foreign Affairs, she introduced the pivot to Asia, I think going 10 years back or something like that, or 12 years back. And then we have not discussed that as quite much as we are doing it quite right now. I think U.S. will have a strong focus on what's going on in the Indo-Pacific. And I think the best way to give U.S. possibilities for that is that we in Europe will step up, taking care of our own security. I think that's the lessons learned from Ukraine. Of course, we should also be aware of the situation in the Indo-Pacific, and especially the relationship between China and Taiwan. I'm very much concerned about what will happen in that area, looking 2 or 3 years ahead. And maybe we will also see a new conflict arise if China will attack Taiwan one way or another. What will happen from Russia? Will they also maybe attack at the same time a NATO country? And I think we have to have a quite open discussion about this very difficult question. But first of all, I think we should be very focused on building up a strong defense in Europe. We are too dependable on US. We have spent too little on defense for Europe, or for Europe's defense for so many years. Now we are stepping up and doing what is necessary, and that will also be helpful for US in the future, I would say.
Thank you for that. Please.
Hi, my name is Nille Marianne Evers-Peters from the American-German Institute at Maastricht University in the Netherlands. I've got a question about, because you mentioned the Arctic is obviously more important now, and you've brought that to the table at NATO. Also, Ukraine, or support for Ukraine obviously has to, we have to keep up the momentum right at the moment. I wondered, how do you, Denmark, your colleagues from Nordics, Baltics, how do you plan to convince the southern European states to kind of stay on board, keep supporting Ukraine, as we see more division within NATO, within the EU? Thank you.
Yeah, that's
that's different. It just is different in one part of Europe from the other part of Europe.
Yeah, and it's also a difficult question. So I'm very fond of we are running out of time because I think we have so quite difficult questions coming up. I think to be to start with a positive note. A year ago, there was a huge discussion about will US still be a part of NATO, and will we be able to reach a new agreement about defense spendings in NATO. I remember that quite well. Last year, I also spent some days here in the US. It was strong and very tough discussions at that time. We've made a historical agreement in The Hague about the future for NATO, and I think that's also a very strong signal for all European countries. European countries are stepping up now. They are willing to spend more. But of course, the difficult part is how we can be able to do that also in the future. And the future will show that we are willing to do it, but also have to have some quite honest talks about how we can do it together. And I think the reason why Europe will do it together is, in fact, that the security and the security situation in Ukraine is directly linked to the security situation in Europe. And I think, even though that we have huge discussions in Europe for further support to Ukraine, we have shown the last 3.5 years that we have been able to do it. We have not been split. And that's, in fact, a success story that we have seen the commitment from almost all European countries in that context.
So let me switch here for a final question. One of the more interesting facts is the European Union is getting into defense in a way that it really hasn't been involved in defense and security before, but we're at the beginning of this. You hold the presidency of the European Council at this time, and you're halfway through it. So as you're thinking about foreign security policy, where would you point to the achievements in Denmark's presidency thus far? What do you hope to achieve before the end of Denmark's presidency in December? And maybe lay that, I know we don't have much time left, but lay that into the context of what are going to be the growing pains of the European Union as it moves into an area that has previously been the domain of nation states or NATO?
In these days, we have a very important discussion going on in the European Council about the frozen assets and if we should be able to invest some of these frozen assets directly into defense capabilities in Ukraine. Hopefully we will reach an agreement on that in the coming days. That is indeed an important goal for Denmark during our presidency.
And do you think one is that close to an agreement in the coming days?
I think so. I think we will see an agreement on this very, very important topic. We have discussed that for quite many months now. Some would argue years. I think we are reaching an agreement on that, and that will also be the best way to help Ukraine in the future. As I mentioned, 1 to 6. That's very difficult for them to keep on fighting. So that's the major goal for the Danish EU presidency. Hopefully to have an agreement on that. And the next goal is to ramp up production in Europe. We have too much red tape. We are not doing enough to give better conditions for defense companies in Europe to scale up production. A lot of bureaucracy, a lot of difficult legislation is on the table and giving huge difficulties for these companies. Right now in Denmark, we are trying to re-establish a company producing ammunition. I think from we made the decision until the company will start up the production, I think we are looking into 4 years, something like that. That's too long. So we have to speed up all these decisions, especially on legislation. And that's also a major discussion right now in the European Council, how we can give better conditions for defense companies.
So then let's just do one last question on the frozen assets. As I understand it, and I've been briefed a little bit on this, it could be as collateral up to $300 billion of the assets being used as collateral for loans that then would be repaid through the reparations if we ever get to that point, or hopefully get to that point. Is that the contour of this agreement? And if one reaches agreement, as you said, in the coming days, how quickly would Ukraine get the benefit of some of the money from this agreement?
I can't remember what's on the table.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll not explain it here publicly. But I think we will see a very fast way of getting more money to Ukraine. And we're not talking months, I think we are talking weeks.
Well, that would be very good news, and I think I would say a historic accomplishment for the Danish presidency should you get there. So, Mr. Minister, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, thank you for coming to Washington. Thank you for your leadership in the alliance. On behalf of the audience, virtually and in here, thank you for this fascinating conversation.
Thank you so much.